Well, to let you know, those who were able to join us at the 11 o'clock last week, or those who happened to see the video of Bishop DeCunha's visit, he was very pleased with the welcome, and very pleased with the celebration of the Eucharist. He found it very energizing, was how he described it. So, kind of we're doing something right, I guess. We impressed the big guy, which is helpful. But it was a wonderful visit, and my thanks to all those who helped with behind the scenes and help set things up, and thanks to all you who were able to offer your prayers and participate in that liturgy. As much as it was a busy weekend here at St. John's, there was things that happened elsewhere, believe it or not, outside of Pecasset. And one of these was a TV show. I won't say the TV show, but there's a TV show last weekend that's shown on Saturday nights that did a video in anticipation of the Christmas holiday. As you know, all 4 candles are lit, our nativity scene's out, last 5 of our Jesse tree are up. Our radio commercial started yesterday. We're in that final preparations, a final push. And at this point, we're letting others know, inviting others to join us for this Christmas celebration. And in that spirit, this sketch was done, kind of poking fun at that part of our Christmas celebration, if you will. Just the opening line of how they titled the video, "Time for your annual trip to church with your parents." It was actually humorous. It was all the stereotypical comments or criticisms about going to church all rolled up into one. If that was my church, I would cry. It wasn't very exciting. But in all honesty, we still have some of those things that they poked fun of. You can still see here or at other parishes, and I can even see in my own spiritual lives as well. A couple things that the commercial reminded me. One, Mass in a parish is very different than Mass at the Vatican. There's going to be some glitches along the way. There's going to be some personality that's a little bit different than what's happening in the high masses elsewhere. But 2, it wasn't an anti-church message. It was capturing how not only many college students, many 20-somethings, but how many people experience and view church. 4 years ago, when I went to UMass Dartmouth, we did a very similar survey to what we've been doing the last couple of weeks in the parish. And I want to read you one of the responses we got from a student who, at the time of writing this, had actually left the Catholic Church. "My experience of the Catholic Church has been about as bland as a Ritz cracker. My home church is spiritually dormant, and my parents refuse to leave. They are convinced that my new Protestant-style worship is another religion. But domestic issues aside, my main issue with the Catholic Church is a sense of spiritual stagnation that I find in many Catholic communities. I have never been once seriously encouraged to read the Bible by Catholic authorities or peers. I've learned very little from Catholic institutions. And I've discovered through friends that I lack an understanding of relatively basic Christian principles." But back to the spiritual stagnation. 3 times it's come up in that opening paragraph. "There is also a prevailing mindset in the Catholic community that raising Catholic children is enough, that evangelism is for some reason unnecessary, or the work of lone missionaries who go to remote villages in Africa. I knew so little about spreading the gospel to others when I attended Catholic Church that I thought it was another religion. Reaching out to others is essential. I would argue that is the point of each person's life. Talking to others about your faith reminds you why you believe what you do, allows you to grow as you consider and look up answers to questions you may have never asked, and bring others to Christ. What could be better?" The sentiment captured here isn't alone, by the way. Captures in a very good way the thoughts of many. Again, not just college students and younger people. We find this across the board. The sentiment here, the sentiment being captured in that church, are evidence to us of what happens when our faith becomes routine, when it becomes boring, perhaps, And we all experience that in spiritual growth. The saints did as well. That spiritual dormancy, stagnation, or routine. Just a couple quick little tests. I don't say this to be critical. I just say this to put all of us, including myself, on a plane here of what the readings are actually going to encourage us on today. But if we think that we're not guilty of that, two little indicators. No raising of hands, please. I don't want to know. How many of you responded amen to the second reading? Oh, you did you? How many? It wasn't a prayer. It was part of a reading. But if it becomes routine, we hear forever and ever, amen. It's an automatic. That's a sign of routine. The other sign, by the way, is when we don't say anything in the responses or the songs. Both of them are challenges to us that perhaps our faith has become routine or stuck. The first reading today from King David, we have an example of complacency in faith. David, if you recall, has this great relationship with God when he's being challenged and provoked. All these great encounters he has with the Lord amidst these trials from enemies and invading armies. And now we hear today he doesn't have enemies on every side. And what happens is David kind of doesn't know how to live out this relationship with God, doesn't know how to communicate with this God, and eventually takes over God's role. The seemingly innocent statement, I'm going to build a house for the Lord to dwell in. I have a big house, so shouldn't God. It seems like a nice thought, seems like a holy thought, but it's David determining what's holy. It's David determining what God needs. And God's response is basically, in a scriptural way, mind your own business, David. Your role is not to determine what I need. There's nothing that you can do that could add to who I am, to my greatness. But you better believe you need stuff from me. That's how that relationship works. That's how we determine that life of faith, is when we seek to do the will of God. David's affliction is alive and well in 2014, and perhaps one of the indicators of this spiritual boredom or stagnation or blandness, is this extreme approach to gift giving in order to make Christmas somehow different from the rest of the year, to make Christmas extra special, because our faith is enough to do that, because our faith sometimes has become so routine. Remember Bishop D'Acunha's words for those who were here last week. Let's make Christmas this year all about Christ. That our gift giving becomes an extension of our love, expressions of love for one another, in celebrating Christ's birth, instead of replacing with just gift giving because it's Christmas and forgetting about why it's Christmas. But in order for that to occur, we need to recognize that there's something very much out of the ordinary in this celebration of Christmas. That there's nothing ordinary about the angel's message today to Mary. That there's nothing ordinary about Mary's response to the angel. And there's nothing ordinary that occurs whenever we gather at this table each week. The angel tells us of the impending arrival of God himself in human form. That God is becoming a human being to save us from sin, death, and the darkness that exists in our world and in our lives. Mary is able to accept that extraordinary message because of her humility, her courage, and her faith, all of which is born of a very real love and trust in God. Not a concept of the divine, not a spiritual energy, but a love and trust in God himself. And we gather here as baptized children of God, as adopted by God, meant to have that type of loving bond with God, a relationship with God, not a concept, but with God himself. And as we gather here at Mass, we gather here to nourish the gift of faith in our praise and worship of God, and to have an encounter with Jesus Christ himself. How could that be ordinary? It can't, unless we aren't seeing with the eyes of faith. And that's the danger of being stuck in a routine when it comes to our faith. The encounter with the Lord that we have here at this table is meant to draw us closer to Him, to change us, to energize us to live as children of God and share His message of love and hope and an invitation to that relationship with others. But we need to be aware of what's happening here. We need to take the time to make sure that we don't make this a routine, that we make this truly an encounter, that we just don't sit through Mass for an hour a week, but that we live it, and we participate it, we celebrate it, and we continue that celebration when we leave here each time.